So we all operate in our businesses doing things the way, and we don't even notice the water that we're swimming in, the way that we operate. But a coach outside your world can go, kind of funny you guys do that in this business.
This is Dental All Stars, where we bring you the best in dentistry on marketing, management, and training. Here's your host, Alex Nottingham.
Welcome to Dental All Stars. The topic is the impact of coaching on scaling success. Our guest is Bill Gallagher. Bill is a top-rated business coach with 36 years of experience, specializing in helping CEOs and entrepreneurs achieve accelerated growth, regain work-life balance, and optimize leadership skills. He has a track record of success as CEO of 4 companies and a partner in 2 other. He is also the host of the Scaling Up Business podcast. Please welcome back, Bill.
Thanks for having me back.
Excellent. Good to have you. We had you in the last episode. We talked about the 3 secrets of companies that really scale. And that last piece was all about coaching.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about coaching. I had to hold both of you back because we have our president of coaching, Eric Vicker, on the call. And I know you guys want to get into the coaching stuff. And we have plenty of time to do that right now, plus some follow-up questions. So right out the gate, let's talk about what is the impact, and I can ask both of you, what do you find the impact coaching has been on scaling a business?
Well, let me start as I like to do with a story, right? I could actually tell lots of stories about coaching and being coached. So when I think about all the different things that I've undertaken in my life, they all have some kind of coach. I've had a financial coach to help me when I was stepping up to some new things or when I made some money. I had a different financial coach when I was on the brink of a bankruptcy, who helped me work through the other side of it, right? They didn't get me out of it. They coached me through it. When I decided to take on my fitness, I started running triathlons, and I did 45 triathlons and marathons. But when I first went out to swim, in the open water, I'm like, I don't really know how to. I've never been a great swimmer. Had embarrassing moments as a kid, and so I got a coach who taught me how to swim and how to get better at it. And I'm still a mediocre swimmer, but I can swim for miles in the ocean, right? So I might be slow, but I'll get there. And in every pursuit, running, triathlon, writing, speaking, facilitating, coaching, I've had a coach for coaching. Every business coach told me to straighten my business out and clean things up. I've had coaches in every realm of life, and I'm always getting new coaches. The 2 most recent coaches I had, one is a writing coach, and I actually went through 3 because the first couple weren't quite fitting. It was a hard process, so I found somebody who made the whole thing a little bit easier for me, and I settled on somebody I liked, and they would call themselves an editor. Right. They're a developmental editor, but I tend to think of them as coaching me through it because it's not a ghost writer, right? I'm doing the writing. But that's the kind of thing that I think of. And then I also took up this new sport called wing foil surfing, where you stand on a hydrofoil surfboard and then you hold a wing in your hand and you harness the wind. And it's really kind of awkward to do. And at first it's exhausting because you're not using your balance right. But you get a coach and you break it down. You learn to control the wing and learn to control the foil and then start to put them together. And now let's learn how to do this turn and that turn. And then pretty soon you're out in big wind, out in, the fiercest places. And it's awesome. And you feel like a badass doing something that, you could only imagine doing beforehand that you just saw in pictures and video, right? The coach helps you to get there, and they don't do it for you. They help you to do it. And there's times I'm like, don't coach me to create a funnel for my marketing. Just go create that thing for me. I don't want to become an expert in that. There's times when you want something done for you. And then there's times when you want it done, you want to be coached to do it because it's going to be core to who you are. So I decided I wanted to write my own book. So I got a writing coach. I didn't hire a ghostwriter. It's a different approach. And then you got to figure out what kind of a coach are you going to empower? And look, we've all had coaches at different points where they were irritating to us. And if you think about it, since you were a little kid, your mom's been trying to tell you what to do, how to straighten up and fly right and that kind of thing. And it's not easy to take that advice. And it's even harder later to take it from your spouse, business partners, and other kinds of people. But so there's something willful about choosing a coach, empowering them as your coach, and you're saying, Coach, give me some feedback. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Tell me what I can't see. Because you can't see the way you're swinging your golf club or your tennis racket. You can't see the way you're holding your wing foil. You need some feedback from somebody to tell you what you're doing that you can't see on yourself, right? The other phrase is, we'll never, it's really hard to read the label from inside the jar, right? And the other one that I really love is that we'll never really know who discovered water, but you can be damn sure it wasn't a fish. Right. So we all operate in our businesses doing things the way, and we don't even notice the water that we're swimming in, the way that we operate. But a coach outside your world can go, it's kind of funny you guys do that in this business. I know it's a medical thing and it's fancy and all that, but when I go get my hair cut, this is what she does when I leave. And why do you make it so hard? Why is this a problem? And then they can stop and go, because everyone always does that. Maybe we shouldn't.
That's how they taught us how to do it. I sum it up like this, Bill. The coach is a person you're paying money to tell you the things that you could be doing better. And it's this fine line as a coach that you're walking saying, if I push too much, can they handle it? Or are they going to fire me as a coach? And if I don't push hard enough, are they going to go, oh, they don't really have anything for me?
I've been fired many times as a coach, and I'm probably just about to get fired again anytime now. But I'm often telling people, listen, you brought me in here because of X, Y, and Z, and I see all that right there with you. And that's great news because it's much easier to work on you than anyone else. So let's start there. And there are sometimes people are like, get out of my office. I hired you to work on my team, not me. And I've already grown my company over $300 million. And who the hell are you? And,
So just some basics coaching. One of the things we know is little things done well equal big results.
Consistent changes over time.
And here's what happens. And I just would love your insight on this as an expert coach. We coach exactly how to do things. Obviously, variety in that based upon the client. Simple things, most basic thing is like how to answer the phone. And we preach it, we train it, we preach it, we train it over and over and over and over again. And yet the client will look at the coach and say, hey, how come my team is still saying it the wrong way? How come they're still doing X the wrong way? As a coach, how do you I don't want to fill in the blank here. How do you handle that as a coach?
Oh, that's really, really obvious. Why does anybody do the things the way they do them?
Habits, personality, fears.
Yeah. And why do they have those habits? Why does one person get off the couch and go to the gym and one person play the next episode?
The way they're wired, their DNA, the way they
motivation,
grew up, repetition.
discipline.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say something maybe a little bit radical. It's because the way each of them sees the world and themselves in the world is different. So one person sees themselves as an athlete full of potential, sees that workout being a particular way, and the other person is like, I'm going to die of a heart attack anyway. Life is short. I can't wait to see how succession ends, right? They're just different ways of looking at the world. So if you want to change the way the people answer the phone or do whatever, you want to change the way they see the customer and the business as a whole and alter or expand from their present view, which is limited to the things they've already considered in their view of themselves. So I might give them a customer perspective. I might show them what happens to the whole life cycle of the business. Any of those kinds of things that alter the way they see the world will alter their actions to fit that new view naturally, effortlessly. And then new actions will deliver new performance outcomes. Now, the performance outcomes could be worse, depending on what they saw or whatever, but it'll be different, right? And we could keep optimizing that. So one simple thing, like I used to go to this one dentist office all the time, and the way the staff interacted with me, I just always thought, God, these are lazy people that could give a crap about me. The way they like visited with each other, and I'm like, hey, I'm here. Regard me. Like, pay attention to me. They'd like be all friendly. And then they'd be like, so when do you want to come back in? I'm like, wow,
So
where's all
true.
that personality and stuff? I feel like,
The care.
like nothing. Like, you don't care about me at all. And you're annoyed and you're not helpful and you're not funny. And then you turn back your friend, you'd be super funny again.
Mhm.
And like,
Yeah.
yeah, I wanted out of there.
This
And
is.
another one, I felt like I was always being upsold. Oh, this is a very serious
Oh
thing.
yeah.
Oh, you need to get this. Oh, no, we need to go deep on this one, like always being upsold. And interestingly enough, then I go to the next dentist and they're like, yeah, your gums are fine. You're doing great.
Well,
This is
Keep
the
coming
meat
back.
word.
I have a question for. So this is where I was itching from the last episode to ask these questions. So you're both welcome to chime in. We'll start with Bill.
Mhm.
Is in terms of when you're scaling up a business, you're making changes.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, it's a change.
Yes.
If you're growing,
Yeah.
how do you handle team members or leadership team members or partners that are having difficulty with change?
Well, nobody really likes change. That's fundamentally human.
Except
None of
what
us.
is it? What is it? The only babies like being changed, their diapers, something like that.
Actually,
Yeah.
I was just with my granddaughter, my first granddaughter, last night and this morning, and she does not at all like being changed.
And even
Suddenly,
babies like being
cold air
changed.
hits her in the ass. And they like how they feel after they're changed,
There you
right? And so too adults. We like having breakthroughs, but nobody likes to punch through a barrier. So the interesting thing, everybody loves a breakthrough, but nobody likes to encounter a barrier. And encountering a barrier is fundamental to a breakthrough. Now, when you find yourself on the other side of it, it's, oh, thank God, I just had a breakthrough. It's amazing. But before you get there, you've got to go find. So if you want to have breakthroughs and that feels great to you, then get curious about what are the barriers and see if you can push through them. Right. But that's going to be uncomfortable. And if like on the other side of this is a breakthrough. So I'll share a triathlon story again. So I was starting to do triathlons many years ago, and I had to get good at the outdoor swimming. I got some basic instruction, that kind of thing. But now I needed to practice on my own. But I got there late because I was working and because whatever. And it's now the wrong time of year, and the sun's gone down. It's drizzly, foggy in San Francisco. It's cold and alone. I'm cold alone in the dark, not dark, but definitely in the sunset. And I've got to go swim in the bay by myself. Now, I was in protected area enough that was not dangerous, really. But it felt awful. So I just thought about it, and I thought, okay, well, this goes two ways. One is I quit now, and then I have to think about how I organize so that I am swimming in the optimal time instead of this awkward time. And then I've got to make excuses about why I quit and maybe lie a little bit so I don't sound like such a wimp. Or I could go out on this miserable afternoon and do this miserable damn swim. And then tomorrow I could brag about what a badass I am that I went through the miserableness of it. And I'm like, oh, this is great. The worse this is, the better my stories are tomorrow. And I love to brag, right? Like, love bragging about what a badass I am. So I went and swam, and I'm like, wow, this is miserable. Good stories for tomorrow. And wow, it's so cold. My feet are frozen. My hands are frozen. My face is frozen. It's hard to breathe. I'm half a mile in.
Wow.
Good stories for tomorrow.
Yeah.
I can't wait I better brag about this because this sucks right now.
So
I like looking forward to the breakthrough. I like that.
Yeah, looking for the breakthrough. We use the results formula, right? The results you're getting come from the actions you're taking. The actions you're taking come from the beliefs that you have about the world and around you, which is exactly what you're talking about. How do I see things?
The beliefs come from the way you see things, right?
That's right. That viewpoint you have, and I think where limitations of coaching or virtual coaching or lack of leadership with a dentist who's just focused on their mouth, I'll include myself as a guilty party here. We don't know how to actually get in conversation enough, back to the Rockefeller, having the meeting, having the vision, having the tactics, all of that, to really sit with someone and say, okay, I'm going to help you as an individual one-on-one get that belief, how you see yourself in this world, to change so that I can eventually get the action to change.
Yeah, here's the thing though. The pitfall is people try to they try to turn it into some affirmation, or they try to convince themselves of something. So I'm like, oh, I feel weak. And so I'm going to go, I'm strong, I'm strong, I'm strong. But the whole time I feel like I'm lying to myself. And maybe eventually I buy into it enough. But another way is to think of something else that's actually possible and available. Try on a new perspective. So there's a few things that could be done. Okay, I need to be strong right now, but I'm not feeling strong. What am I? What could I be? Oh, well, I'm creative. All right, I'm going to be creative, right? Because I can't be strong right now. So you could bring in some other way of being that's actually available for you without faking it, without doing a power move or some other BS to try to psych yourself up into something that's not totally sustainable. And instead, just think about what else is possible. And when we think about like, how do we change the way we see the world? Well, one of them is I could describe and imagine and create a new future for myself by simply imagining a new direction, not one that's impossible, but one that I see possible that's of interest that'll require some changes. And now, having created a new vision for my future, I could start to map back out onto the present. And another way to do it is to actually commit to something. So I sign up for something, I sign a contract, I say I do, I take a job, I hire someone. Any time that you commit yourself powerfully alters your view of yourself in the future. So I think about going on vacation. Interesting. That's fun. I commit to going on vacation by buying tickets. Now I start to think about, okay, I'm going to be in Hawaii, right? Like I'm altered by that thing. I date someone, I think about a future with them, and then I say, would you marry me? And they say, I do. And we stand in front of our families and communities and we sign contracts. And suddenly, like, oh my God, oh, now I have to deal with that for the rest of my life, right? And things change, not always for the good. It can be a struggle. It pays off in the end. I'll be married 29 years this year.
Wow.
It takes something to go through all of right the ups and downs. New grandfather, 29 years married. There's reward that comes from it. So uh, articulate a new vision for the future for yourself, for your team, for your business. That changes your view, alters your beliefs, and shifts things. Um, Commit to something consistent with that vision. That also does something. Powerfully declare yourself, right? Publicly, powerfully declare yourself to tackle something like we're going to transform dental health in this community for this group, for this kind of thing. We're going to eliminate fear from people's thoughts about dentistry and then lead to better dental health outcomes. You know, I never want somebody to have what my mom had or like that kind of thing. My mom has struggled with some dental issues. Um, so, you know, like there are things that you can do to alter your view of yourself and your beliefs. And there are more powerful ways to do that than simply psyching yourself up.
Who
Yeah,
is,
agreed.
Bill, who's a good candidate, who's not a good candidate for coaching, or who will do well with coaching and who won't?
Anyone is a good candidate for coaching if they'll willfully take on coaching and make their coach by giving their coach permission, saying, hey, coach me. Hey, I'd like coaching on this. So, coaching is unnatural for most of us. But if you willfully hire, commit, connect, request coaching, and then just because you paid money doesn't mean you're really open to I've had people pay me lots and lots of money and then reject the coaching. So I pay the money, I commit, or maybe your coaches volunteer. Great. But then you have to say, hey, please coach me. And then you have to go and say, okay, that sounds uncomfortable, but I'm going to try it. But if you get a coach and you're like, I want to be a champion, and you get onto the team and you get the top coach, and the coach says, okay, you've got Super Bowl dreams. Great. We're going to go to the Super Bowl. This team's going to the Super Bowl, and you could be on us and you could help us get there. And then, okay, go run through the tires. And you're like, yeah, that's not really my path. I feel like, if I'm authentic and I'm speaking my truth, then tires aren't for me and not my journey. F you and your stupid view of yourself. Your coach said, run through the damn tires. Go run through the tires or quit the team, but stop arguing
Right.
with your coach.
And it's interesting how sometimes I hear you might blame the coach. The coach didn't get it done. And let me do another coach to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
And I like what you said, commitment. And that's the difference between a doer versus a dabbler.
I had this a lot of times over the last 10 years. somebody's in there like, we love this scaling up framework and that kind of thing. And it's great for us to set our priorities. And then we start working on the thing. They're like, hey, what about this OKR system? I really feel like OKRs are maybe more what you need. No, I'm a scaling up coach. We talk about priorities. It's the same thing, but it's just
The
different
same thing.
language. You're moving deck chairs on the Titanic, as they say.
Sure.
Now, there's pros and cons, and there's fine points about OKRs versus priorities. And I even have some teams that use them. But if you're the sort of person that's going to hire a scaling up coach and then debate OKRs or some other system or want to like continually change stuff, like stop it. Just pick a direction and then empower that coach and run it out. And then it'll have outlived itself and you can move on to the next thing, right? But stop arguing with your coach.
I wrote a book with Brian Tracy. I love Brian Tracy. And he says it's really key to have long-term perspective. And that's what we're talking about here. Because like I was going to ask you about the EOS framework, right? And that's very similar to scaling up.
EOS, it's fantastic framework, right? Because it's a whole ripoff of scaling up. And Gino, in his first book, used to say, hey, I learned from Vern Harnish. And he was one of the coaches. He learned from Vern Harnish. And then he rebranded all his stuff. But it's fantastic stuff. And you should do it. If you're doing it, if you've been thinking about it, it's fine. It's a far more limited set than what we do. Well, Scaling up is really about big growth, and it's an open living framework. The difference is Gino took his stuff and he said, he renamed everything. He cut out some of the good things that we did. And he's like, this is my operating system. Well, we're for more of an open framework, and we're about big growth, not just getting out of your business. And, the main problem they solve, and it's very popular with people because it takes somebody who's totally in their business and gets them out working more on the business and empowers the team. And getting that systematically done is fantastic work. It's part of what we do with different terms, but it's just not all we do.
Well, that's kind of what you're saying is a lot of these frameworks, again, we had this discussion in our first podcast that it was built from somebody else and so on. And like use the analogy of just shifting chairs, find something that makes sense, that has a good credentialing and stick with it. We're always
EOS
looking
is good for you, keep using it. My problem with it is like the lack of acknowledging intellectual property creators, right? The lack of like calling it their own thing in the way they compete. That's the thing that but the work itself, fantastic. Go use it.
Start a fire going on here.
It's fine. Like, and it's great. I know lots of people that use it and they're very happy with it. And if that's working for you, keep at it.
Yeah. So Eric, do you want to jump in?
I don't want to jump in as much as a question. I just want to say thank you for your insight. I really appreciate your podcast. The work that you guys are doing is awesome. We love taking things outside of dentistry, bringing it into dentistry, like you said, finding what's working
bring it
from a subway or whatever. Yeah. What we need are other voices in our world that says, look, don't be so stubborn. Learn how to be flexible with your business, because if you're not growing, you're declining, right? And there's got to be change. There's got to be breakthrough those barriers to do that. So what are some things? Think bigger. I did have a question for you. Why is Harry in the BHAG? Why is that word in there? Why is it just big, audacious goals?
So it's the idea of like the scary monster in the closet.
Oh, gotcha.
So big, hairy, audacious. Big and hairy is like
risky.
The scary monster, right?
Got it. Okay.
Hairy, and maybe there's more to that hairy word, but it's the idea of I have no idea how to do this. It's uncomfortable. I'm a little afraid of this thing, this big heritage skull. I had a guy, one of our clients valued over $1 billion. He's like, he created this huge thing. He's like, I don't even know if I can do that. I don't know if I want to do that. I don't even know how to do that. I'm like, exactly. Great. When I created my big, hairy, audacious goal was to help 5 million business leaders before I retire. And at the time, like I was working with like 75 people at a time for a year, right? And then doing a handful of workshops. There was no way that I got to 5 million. But 5 million was possible for someone, just not me at that point. And I'm like, but that was big enough for my ego. So my ego, I wanted to be able to say at the end of my career that was a number big enough that I could say, I impacted 5 million, I'm done, I'm ready to retire. And so I thought, and if I get to that, there'll be some financial rewards that come along with it, but it's the impact that mattered most to me and that everybody wants me to win, right? So the money is nice for me, for my wife, for my family, but the impact, everybody wants that. Like help 5 million business leaders. Fantastic, right? So I'm working with my 75 or so at a time and chugging along and that kind of thing, doing a couple of workshops. And I'm like, how do I get to 5 million? Well, who else gets to 5 million? What do they do? And I'm like, well, they write books and they have shows and they have things like that. And they have blogs and they have newsletters. And my foreign mate, at the time, a guy by the name of Jordan Harbinger, who's a top business podcaster, said, Bill, you have a background in radio. You should have a show. Why write a blog? Have a radio show. Like you had a great radio show. You were a radio executive. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. So I started a show, and like it's been fantastic ever since then. And I love doing my show, right? But now this year,
I thought you were just born with that voice.
Yes. Yes. It's funny. In the beginning, I hated, like as a 20-year-old on the radio, I hated my voice. And I listened back to some old recordings, right? Mic drops from that time. And I'm like, wow, that's so cringy. Listen to that 20-year-old kid there on the radio. But I'm good with my voice today. I'm very happy with it. But I had radio, I had the background, I knew how to be live, I knew how to talk, that kind of thing. So I did that. Now this year, as I finish 10 years of coaching full time, I should hit 1 million. So my first million impacted, right? Between my shows, my workshops, my programs, like all of it, I should exceed 1 million this year, right? That's unbelievable when I think back 10 years ago. Now it seems very normal and natural. And I can see now moving through 5 million, and maybe the number could get even bigger, right? Before I retire. Because I'm 58 now, changes. And I could see working maybe another 20 years.
We appreciate you. We appreciate your voice. We appreciate your podcast, Scaling Up Coach or scalingcoach.com and Scaling Up Business podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill Gallagher. And remember to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Get your episodes as they are released. Share with your friends. And until next time, go out there and be an all-star.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Dental All-Stars. Visit us online at allstardentalacademy.com.